Have you ever been to the grocery store and picked out an item and looked at the label and realized, I don't know what any of these ingredients are and I can't even pronounce them?
Yep.
That is likely because those foods are ultra processed. There are severe downsides to ultra processed foods, including obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. A factor of this is driven by corporate concentration and largely driven by corporate concentration because the corporate institutions control over 80% of the grocery industry. So these ultra-processed foods have great impacts on our health. But what are ultra-processed foods? As Carlos Montero tells us in his article titled Ultra-Processed Foods, What They Are and How to Identify Them, ultra-processed foods are not real food. They are formulations of food substances often modified by chemical processes and then assembled into ready-to-consume hyper-palatable food and drink products using flavors, colors, emulsifiers, and a myriad of other cosmetic additives. A thing about these foods is that they are very profitable. They are made out of very cheap and low-cost ingredients. That way they can be marketed to appeal to everybody. They are chemically modified, which means they are filled with additives like sugars, fats, salts, and oils. But who makes these? Well, you'd be surprised to know that over 80% of the grocery industry is ran by only a few large companies. Steve Striffler writes in his article titled Corporate Concentration in the Food Industry, it is not simply that a handful of firms control a particular industry or crop, it is at all levels of the broader food system, including not only the production, processing, trade, and sale of food products, but also of farm machinery, seeds, agrochemicals, and other inputs are now controlled by relatively few and exceptionally large companies. If you were to go to the grocery store to pick out a health drink, for example, you would not want to pick out a health drink that had a Pepsi logo on it. But what if I told you that some health drinks, like Gatorade, that I personally enjoy, or Muscle Milk or Evolve energy drinks, are all ran by PepsiCo? Other big corporations include Procter & Gamble and General Mills and Kellogg's. They all control big portions of the grocery industry. So this is where it comes down to eye appeal. Since you are more likely to buy a health drink with a label like Gatorade or Muscle Milk instead of PepsiCo, companies know that, and that way they advertise it as a health drink even though it is ran by that same company. They also focus on profits. They make faster and cheaper products, and that way they can sell more with a bigger market. And they can buy out smaller companies that are just starting in that industry and add it to their arsenal, you could say. But what is the impact of these on our health? Well, the ingredients in these are very unhealthy, like I said. They include fats, sugars, oils, and other salts. And these unhealthy ingredients can lead to epidemics like the obesity, the cardiovascular disease, and the diabetes. Another big factor is that they are very addictive. They are filled with ingredients that do not satisfy, and that way you keep eating and eating, which leads to overeating, and then then it leads to obesity. Another factor is they lack nutrients. Our body needs a certain amount of nutrients, and when companies who are producing these foods, they substitute out the nutrients for these artificial sweeteners and artificial ingredients, and that way your body just lacks these nutrients. The European Journal of Clinical Nutrition conducted a study comparing a diet of only ultra-processed foods with a diet of no ultra-processed foods. The results were that the people on the ultra-processed diet gained almost a kilogram of weight, which is about 2.2 pounds. And the people on the non-ultra-processed food diet lost the same amount of weight in the same time period. So that shows that ultra-processed foods are one of the leading causes of obesity. According to the National Institute of Health, nearly 1 in 3 adults are overweight. More than 2 in 5 adults have obesity, and about 1 in 11 have severe obesity. So with all these products and all these things out there, they show that ultra-processed foods and all these companies making ultra-processed foods are some of the leading factors to the health crises in America. Ultra-processed foods are everywhere. They are very good. I personally could not live without a frozen pizza or a mac and cheese or bacon in the morning. They are controlled by a relatively few amount of large corporations that use eye appeal and they focus on profits over the health. And all these products lead to a great deal of health problems. I'm not saying in this speech that you should completely avoid ultra-processed foods, as like I said, I personally could not do that in my life. But I'm saying with this speech, it should help you just know that these ingredients are showing ultra-processed foods and that they can lead to a great deal of health issues. Thank you.